Hi, this is Rev. Welcome to Storytime Sundays. Each week I'm going to be telling a story about something that really happened to me, or something that happened to my wife and I or my family. And I'm hoping that I'll get some friends to come and share some of their stories as well. But every Sunday there'll be a story told, and I hope you guys enjoy the stories. This particular story, people probably have heard me tell it before, and it was actually published in uh, a book called Australian Stories, and so I thought I'd start with that one. Um, so imagine you're sitting waiting for your train to come. I'm going to my friend's youth group. I'm gonna talk to his kids about some stuff. And on my way, I stop at the train station in the middle of the city, and I get on a different train. And as I'm sitting waiting for this train to come, I notice that one seat over from me, the guy is really drunk. And he's not only drunk, he's belligerent. He's obnoxious. He's probably gonna cause some trouble, and he's got a 1 liter beer bottle that's in a paper bag, and he's taking big swigs off it. And I'm a bit worried that maybe other people might wind up getting hurt or something. So I just stay close by, and when the train comes, he staggers off onto the train, and it's my train too, so I get on, but I make sure that I sit in the same car as he does, just in case I need to do something. And I'm sitting like 4 rows away from him, but no one else is on the train at that point. But as he starts to cuss and swear and just be obnoxious, I notice that the people that are close to me start moving further and further away on the car, and I don't blame him, but I'm keeping an eye on him because I want to be able to do something if people need me. So I'm sitting there, and he's just kind of muttering to himself and drinking his beer, and so I'm kind of relaxed for a little bit. So I start going over the teaching that I'm going to do. I'm gonna teach on the rich young ruler, and talk about all the sacrifices that the disciples made and all these kind of things, and I'm thinking, and I'm putting the talk together in my brain, and the whole time I got my eye on this guy just to make sure. And then at one of the stops, a group of young Asian students gets on the train, and he's like I said, he's drunk, he's belligerent, he's obnoxious, and he starts calling out to the kids, and they're trying to ignore him, and they're laughing and talking to one another, and he keeps trying to interrupt, and they're trying to ignore him, and he starts making some remarks that sound pretty racist to me, and I'm getting ready to stand up and do something. Every stop we stop at, I'm looking for an attendant to say, hey, this guy's the problem, but I don't see one. And finally the kids have had enough, and when we stop at one of the train stations, they get off, they walk to the next car down, and they get back on the train. Well, he can see all of that, and he really starts getting upset. And I'm starting to wonder, okay, what's going to happen now? But I still got this thing to talk about, and so I'm trying to make sure that my head's right for that. And so I open my Bible to find the passage that I'm going to teach on that night. But instead, my Bible, as it sometimes does, opens to a different passage. And usually I just keep thumbing through until I find the passage that I'm looking for. But I see the great white throne judgment. And the judgment of the sheep and the goats. And that's one of my favorite passages. So I right away know what's going on. And I keep looking at this guy, and I'm looking at my Bible, and I'm looking at this guy, and I'm looking at my Bible, and I'm getting, more and more anxious that I'm going to have to do something about this guy. Then he actually vomits on the train, and I'm pretty sure that drinking on the train is not allowed, and I know that being obnoxious isn't allowed, and disturbing other passengers isn't allowed, and I'm pretty sure that vomiting on the train isn't allowed either. So I'm getting more and more antsy. Something's gonna go down, but I'm still trying to, pay attention to the Bible, and I read this passage, and it talks about how whatever you do for the least of these, for those that are hungry, for those that are in prison, for those that are naked, for those that are thirsty, whatever you do for the very least in this world, you do it unto Jesus. And I'm just starting to think maybe I'm not supposed to talk about what I thought I was going to talk about. And then he just starts getting more and more aggravated. And so he turns and he looks me dead in the eye. And I don't usually blink when someone looks me in the eye. I don't turn away. I don't put my head down. I just look them straight in the eye. And so I'm sitting there looking at him, and he's looking at me, and I'm not turning my head, and he's not turning his head. And then he said, "Hey, when's Ringwood stop?" And I looked up at the chart, saw where we were, and I said, it's about 20 minutes, mate. We'll be there in about 20 minutes. And I'm thinking that's my stop too, so I get to ride with this guy the whole way. And he looks at me again, and he says, "My dad just died." And all of a sudden, I got a glimmer of who this person actually is. And I have this little tug of compassion in my heart. And I walked over, and I sat right next to him. And I said, "I'm really sorry, mate. My name is John. What's your name?" And he says, "My name's John too. Fair dinkum, mate. The two Johns." And he started laughing. And, I had a little bit of a chuckle at his reaction to the fact that we both named John. Like that's never happened before. And he starts telling me the story about how he just came from the funeral where he had to carry his father's coffin to the grave, and had to say goodbye to his dad. And then he told me how just a few years earlier he had to do the same for his mom. I'm getting pretty emotional here. This guy's hurting. My first thought was, I'm gonna have to kick this guy's teeth in, but now I'm just feeling so much compassion. And we just keep talking. We talk about his job. We talk about, what his life is like and how he's been struggling to stay employed. And he's a construction worker, and I was a construction worker. So we start talking about that a little bit. And after a while, he looks at me and he goes, "You're a good bloke, John." And I said, "Thanks, John. You're a good bloke too." We talked a little more, and then he keeps saying it over and over again. "You're a good bloke, John." And next thing you know, we're at our stop, and hey man, this is our stop. Let's get off. And we walked up the ramp to the very top of the Ringwood train station in Melbourne, Australia. And I was going to the left and he was going to the right. And I said, hey, it was good talking to you, John. I'm really sorry about what happened with your father, and I hope that you can grieve and recover from this. And I put out my hand, and he went to shake my hand, and then he pulls his hand back, and he goes, oh, fuck that, mate, give us a cuddle. And he reaches out and he gives me this big hug, and I'm standing there and I'm hugging him, but I'm trying not to throw up on me. And we said our goodbyes, and he took off, and I realized I just rode a train with Jesus. That day, he was dressed as a poor, drunk guy who just lost his dad. And I got the pleasure of spending that time with Jesus. And I walked away just thinking to myself, how often am I sitting on a train? How often am I sitting in a coffee shop? How often am I going through my daily life and I don't take the time to realize that there are people all around me that just want somebody to say hello. Maybe they just need somebody to listen to them for a while. And Jesus says, when you've done this for the least of these brothers of mine, these sisters of mine, when you've done it for them, then you've done it for me. And if I'm really gonna follow Jesus, if I'm really going to call myself a believer in Jesus, then it's my job to pay attention to those moments and to treat them the way that I feel like Jesus would treat them, not the way that Rev the bouncer would treat them. And it was a good reminder. And I went and talked to that youth group, and I told them this story, and I read that scripture. We had a really good night talking about these kinds of things and where you can find Jesus in your life. And so that's the first story. I hope you'll share and like and all that other good stuff that I don't really understand, but I hope you'll come back and we'll share some more stories with you. Hey, Rev loves you.